There's a rather shocking video circulating online of a Labour councillor for comments that he made at an event and a gathering yesterday evening. This has once again stirred up the debate over so-called two-tier policing, with many people, including Nigel Farage, calling for his arrest. I'll show you that video clip in a moment. And if I could just ask you one small thing before we press ahead, about 70% of you don't subscribe to my channel, and I'd like to think you get an objective truth and analysis of what's really going on from my channel here. So please do subscribe, and that is what I will always promise you. Occasionally I'll give you my opinion, but I'll try to reserve that for Black Belt Secrets, which I'll also link down below. Head over there if you want my real thoughts and my thoughts on gossip and all sorts of other stuff. If you're not interested, fine, but if you want my real opinions on things, you'll find them on Black Belt Secrets. But here, I promise you objective, clear analysis on these things. Whether I support it, whether I agree with it or not is irrelevant. But please do subscribe, and that's what I promise you. Let me flip to that clip so you can see it for yourself.
They are disgusting, nasty bastards, and we need to cull their throats and get rid of them all.
So, on the face of it, is exactly the kind of thing that Sir Keir Starmer has been looking to stamp out, particularly given his recent press appearances saying things like the following.
I say it again, anybody involving themselves in disorder, whatever they claim as their motive, will feel the full force of the law. It's important I repeat that because we need to make sure that in the coming days we can give the necessary reassurance to our communities.
And just as a little addition while I'm editing, this phrase somewhat annoys me because the full force of the law is kind of a meaningless phrase. The law is applied as it is, and someone is either found guilty or they're not. And they either plead guilty or they don't. And then they are either found guilty or not guilty if they are prosecuted. So the full force of the law is a bit of a nonsense phrase, with all respect to Sir Keir Starmer. But the reason he's using it is really to make people fear the fear of the law, which is quite right. But I wanted to make clear that there's no sort of half force of the law. So it's not like one person is given half the force of the law and everyone else is given the full force of the law. That's not how it works. And so, if I may respectfully say, reassurance to communities should exclude this kind of language used by this Labour councillor, Ricky Jones, who has now been suspended. The spokesperson for Dartford Labour said that we are aware of a video circulating on social media involving a member of the Dartford Labour group. The behaviour displayed in the video is completely unacceptable. The member has now been suspended from the party. The Met Police, to its credit, also responded rather swiftly to say, "We are aware of the significant public concern around this video. Officers are investigating as a matter of urgency. We will update as soon as we can." Now, beyond this video clip, all they could really be investigating is whether there's any longer video clip before and after to show any potential context of what was happening and what was said. But on the face of it, the video really speaks for itself. So even if the investigation was limited to that video, in my view, there is certainly something to be answered here. Now, just for the avoidance of doubt, I'm not making a statement of fact that there's been the commission of a criminal offence here, because that is not my place to adjudicate. Of course, it's down to the authorities to investigate, charge if necessary, prosecute if necessary, and the appropriate tribunal to come to a finding of fact if there were any prosecution, and only then it becomes a criminal conviction. But what I can say to you is that on the face of it, certainly from the comments that have been made by Sir Keir Starmer and by the Director of Public Prosecutions here, there is certainly a question to be answered, particularly when I was just talking yesterday, a warning to you all about sharing clips of these riots because they themselves and you, by sharing it, might be stirring up hatred and violence and so on. Now, with all the heat and the tension of everything that's been going on around the country and indeed around the world lately, it is absolutely critical that you take steps to protect your personal identity. And that is why I partner with a company on this channel called Incogni, which helps you to do exactly that. And as a lawyer, I strongly recommend that you take steps to protect your personal identity, such as using Incogni. I use it myself myself, and I'm going to explain why. You see, when you browse the internet, you sign up with companies, you provide them your details, they collect a whole host of information about you from your name, your address, your personal details, mobile phone numbers, specific personal information such as financial information and medical information, and then they might pass that information on to third parties. You'll be familiar with the phrase, we may share your data with third parties, and that's exactly what they do. In fact, some of them sell it onto third parties, and even if they don't sell it, the companies that receive it and gather it all together, they sell it on to third parties. Now, Incogni is a service that contacts these data brokers, as we call them, and requires them under data protection legislation, both here and in the United States, to delete all of your information from their servers. This helps to protect your identity from being stolen and cloned so that it prevents people from taking out loans and applications and buying products in your name, leaving you to pick up the bill. Because we've had clients come to us with exactly this problem. They've had someone take out contracts, sometimes 10 or 15 contracts, mobile phone contracts in their name, that they never agreed to, but they are left trying to sort out the mess. Incogni is a very straightforward service. You sign up and you instruct them to contact all of these companies and request and require that they remove your information from their databases. I've used it myself and I've seen it working. I've seen these companies confirming that they've removed my information from their databases. You get a 60% discount off an annual plan using my link and the code in the description below of BlackBeltBarrister, and you will have that peace of mind knowing that your information is being removed from those companies so that it doesn't fall into the hands of bad actors that ultimately try to steal your identity. So check out Incogni. It has a 30-day money-back guarantee if you change your mind, but the peace of mind will be absolutely worth it. Check the link out in the description below, and thank you for listening. This was the clip that I was referring to yesterday.
The offence of incitement to racial hatred involves publishing or distributing material which is insulting or abusive, which is intended to or likely to start racial hatred. So if you retweet that, then you're republishing that, and then potentially you're committing that offence.
And so here, just to emphasise, this was the very firm, quite rightly, the firm stamp down on the promotion or incitement of any kind of violence and rioting and disorder. Quite rightly, as I say, but at the same time, as the saying goes, you can't have it both ways. It can't be that the general public are held to these standards when the Labour's own councillors, party members, if they are not held to those same standards as well. So again, just for the avoidance of doubt, this is for the authorities to investigate and deal with as they see fit. But it will answer for many people the question over two-tier policing. If this is just the end of it and nothing happens, many people will probably feel that that's not fair. Because many people will probably feel that those comments were a direct incitement to violence against those who, on the face of it, were not there because this was a counter protest. So on the face of it, those people were not there, they were somewhere else. But somebody need not necessarily be in exactly the same place to be put in the fear of immediate unlawful violence. If such words or behaviour were used with the intent that that person believes that they will receive immediate unlawful violence against him, then that could amount to an offence. And that's not all. There are several other offences, such as encouraging or assisting a crime under the Serious Crime Act of 2007, at which point I will plug our learned friend Alan Robertshaw on Art of Law. Yes, it rhymes. I will link his channel and hopefully the video, if he's done it by now, in the description below, or when he's done it, I will link it below, talking about, hopefully he's done this because I'm plugging it, but he will talk about different offences under that act. For example, intentionally encouraging or assisting an offence. Just generally, you understand, he'll be talking about those offences and how it might be relevant to making statements like this in a public place. And under Section 45, encouraging or assisting an offence believing it will be committed, there are certain parts of that legislation which will be very interesting to hear about as well. But on the face of it, it's going to be very difficult for someone that uses those kind of words in a public setting, particularly when they are a public figure, to say that they didn't really mean it or they didn't really believe anyone was going to act on those words. And case in point, if we go back to the video and you keep your eye on this lady here to the right-hand side in the orange high-vis jacket, She initially appears to be disturbed by the words used. When I press play, you won't hear it, but when you press play, you'll focus on her facial expression. And perhaps I will tag in the body language guy to get his views on this, because I will defer to his greater expertise. But she appears to me to be visibly disturbed by what she hears. Only then it appears to me that her facial expression changes. She appears to go with the crowd who are chanting and cheering about what's being said. Take a look at her face expression immediately when I press play, and then how it changes when the crowd cheers. Watch this. Looks disturbed, and then goes along with the crowd. So there's a distinct change in her facial expression, in my view. As I say, I'll defer to body language guy. Initially here, she goes from being very concerned to going with what the crowd was chanting and cheering. Let me know what you think, because I think that's significant, and I think that's certainly something that the Met Police could or should be investigating. Obviously, they don't need me to tell them that, but hopefully they will be looking at it with that in mind, because after all, someone making such comments in a public setting is likely to jeer on certain crowds. Now, when you've got a protest and a counter-protest, this is one of the reasons the government has quite rightly tried to stamp out any of the incitement to this kind of aggression and violence and so on, because it can very quickly get out of control. You will have seen various clips online. I'm not going to share them with you here, but you will have seen various clips of groups turning up at a location because they believe that another group is turning up at that location. I believe that that's been used as an excuse by some of the media to say that's why they are there. Maybe it's true, I don't know, but either way, one group turning up because another group was turning up is exactly the point. One group will react because another group is there or another group is doing something. And so this is what the government's trying to stamp out. So on the one hand, it can feel very much like our freedom of expression is being trampled on quite a bit. But on the other hand, there is also the reason to curtail that freedom of expression when it is designed to suppress this kind of escalation of violence. Now, for those, and there's been more than a few, criticizing my use of the term freedom of speech, that's because it is searched in the search engines probably 10 or 20-fold than the freedom of expression. Most people don't use the term freedom of expression. Most people, according to Google Trends, so don't say I'm wrong because it's true, most people use the term freedom of speech. And they are pretty much the same thing. There's a slight distinction between expression and speech. Expression is the way you express something. So strictly speaking, it is the freedom of expression, and it's curtailed in law where the law sees that it's right and justified and proportionate to limit your freedom of expression in situations such as this. So if you exercising your freedom of expression is going to incite some kind of violence, then quite rightly the law says you shouldn't really be doing that because we like to try to keep things calm. But either way you look at it, these words are fairly horrific and shouldn't be used by anybody, let alone a Labour councillor. And so, rightly or wrongly, I think a lot of people are going to draw their conclusions on this so-called two-tier policing in the next 24 to 48 hours, depending on what, if anything, the Met Police do following this video. But as ever with all of these things, we will have to wait and see. Don't forget to check out our learned friend Alan Robert Shaw's channel in the description below. He's got a video coming up on this as well, which you'll find interesting. Make sure you head over and subscribe and congratulate him on 25,000 subscribers. I'm really pleased for him. It's really blowing up. And make sure you subscribe here too. And in the meantime, thank you for watching.